I'm Elizabeth and I'm here to talk about books. Today I'm doing a tag. It's the Hobbies and Pastimes book tag. I was tagged by my good friend Silje, and I believe the tag is created by Marc Nash, and I will of course leave links to both of them down below. I'm going to try to do this quickly because I'm not sure how much I have to say about each question. The first question is about sport. A novel with the best sporting contest or event portrayal. For me, this was no question. It is Fever Pitch by Nick Hornby. It's a book I read when I was, I think, 13, 14, something along the line. But I completely identified with the main character of this book, despite him being a middle-aged man living in the UK. And I was a young girl living in Norway, but I mean, the agony of being a football supporter, I just instantly recognized that feeling. It follows him during the season where Arsenal actually goes on to win the league, but regardless, it's still agony, and I related to that so much. I even remember from the book a scene where he, as a child, has to go to bed and his parents will leave him notes with the football scores on them. My father used to do that for my brother and me when we had to go to bed before the games were ended as children. My brother used to take these out and play the games in our yard. I wasn't that much into playing, I was more into watching, but I mean, I am a football supporter still. My team is Strømsgodset, it's my local team here in Norway. They just avoided relegation from the top division by a goal in the 93rd minute of the game. That was bliss, even though the rest of the game was agony. And then we went on the next weekend to lose the cup final, which was a bummer, but having to choose, I would still choose not to be relegated, so I'm okay with it, I guess. Question 2 is about music. A novel with the best musician or composer character. I'm not much of a music person myself. I will listen to music from time to time, but I tend to revisit the things I've listened to 1,000 times before rather than searching out new stuff. As for books, I went with The Painted Man by Peter Brett. The main character of this novel, which is the first in the series, might not be the best musician alive, I don't know, but he plays the fiddle and it saves his life on more than one occasion, because it seems that this fiddle has an effect on the demons that are everywhere. Question 3 is about collecting. A novel with someone who collects things. I struggled long and hard to come up with an answer for this, and in the end I went with Fahrenheit 451 by Ray Bradbury, because there are a lot of people in this book that collect books because books are banned and burned, and there are people who think they are worth protecting, and I would definitely be one of those people. Question 4 is about cookery, and people who know me would probably not classify me as a foodie. I'll just leave it there. The question is a novel with a great cooking or dining scene in it. I'm not sure if this is a great scene, but it certainly is a dining scene I remember. And I'm also not quite sure if I have the right book, but it is in A Song of Ice and Fire by George R.R. Martin. This is the 3rd book, A Storm of Swords, but I'm a bit fussy on which book this scene is actually in. But it is a scene where the mountain man is having dinner with his goons at an inn, where he ends up raping the innkeep's daughter on the table and then paying the innkeep for it, saying that she is now a whore. So, I mean, not a great dining scene, but it is a scene that I remember, and it was the scene that first came to mind when I read this question. I'm not sure what that says about me. Question 5 is about art, and it feels a bit of a cop-out, but for me, every time there is a question about art, my go-to answer will be a serious threat novel, and it is today as well. This is The Blazing World, which is a book about Harriet Burden, she's called, which is a female artist who is appalled by the lack of attention she's getting. So she has an experiment where she gets 3 men to front her works, and it explodes. So she exposes the art world for seeing men over women. This is also a bit of a cheat because I haven't actually read the book yet, but I know what it's about and it fits the question. Question 6 is about hunting, a novel with a hunting or fishing scene in it. I have gone for a Norwegian novel that sadly is not translated into any other language, and it's all of your loss. It's Song for Eirabu, Slaget på Vigrid. This is the first book in a fantasy duology, where the second book in this duology is probably one of my favorite fantasy books of all time. And you can only read it if you can read Norwegian, which is very, very sad. It's a story taking place in a world before our own. It's based on Norse mythology and the poem Voluspa, where the end of the world is predicted and also the birth of a new one. So this novel sort of claims that that's a cyclic event, and that these events portrayed in this series are from the world prior to our own. So a world that has ended, and ours was the one that rose from that. And there is in this book a hunting scene where 2 of the main characters of the book have like their first sort of romantic feelings for each other, and I like that scene. Question 7 is about gardening, another thing I'm not very good at, although as you can see I actually have 2 green plants that I have managed to keep alive for over a year now, and that's my pride and joy. That has never happened before. The question is a novel with description of gardening or flowers, and for that I've gone with Pond by Claire Louise Bennett. This is a very quiet and unassuming book about a woman living by herself in a cottage in the British countryside, and we follow her during normal day doing mundane tasks, and among them she talks about gardening, about having her own plot and how that failed, and how she shouldn't be doing these projects. She should make less of herself, sort of. I really like this book, even though there's not much happening, but I really like the voice of the main character and about all the little things you tell yourself when you've been alone for a long period of time. Question 8 is about bird watching, another thing I don't really know much about. A novel in which a bird features. I mean, I could have chosen many, but I decided to go for The Return of the King, the last book in the Lord of the Rings epic by J.R.R. Tolkien. There are some huge birds that tend to show up at the most opportune moments in these books, and that's the reason I picked it. For the next question, I'm going to cheat a bit. It's Family Tree Genealogy, a novel which features several generations of a family. And the book I've chosen for this is not in fact a novel, it's a poetry collection, but it is narrative poetry telling a story. It's another Norwegian book. It's called Du bestemmer deg for at dette et minne, or You Decide That This Is a Memory, by Marianne Teie, which is a friend of mine. This is based on her own research into her own family history. It tells the story about her, I think it's her great-grandfather, and about his family and his life and all the things she's managed to dig up, and the life she has imagined for him, because the things you know about their lives are the mere facts, and all the feelings and all the rest of it she has to make up. But I love this. And it's one of the few poetry collections that made me cry, and it makes me cry at the same place every time I read it, and I love it. Question 10 is about modeling, a book in which someone constructs a model or a model railway set or something in miniature. This is another question I really struggled with coming up with an answer to. I'm not sure if my answer is even correct for this. I went with Extremely Loud and Incredibly Close by Jonathan Safran Foer. I believe that the main character of this is somewhat of an inventor. He is a child. He loses his father on September 11 and he is searching through New York for a door which fits the key his father has left behind because he thinks he will find a message for himself there. And I think that this little child is, or this little boy, is an inventor of sorts, and I think he creates lots of little things. But it's been a while since I read this book and I'm not sure if I remember correctly or if I'm mixing it up with another book. But it's the only answer I could come up with, so here it goes. Question 11 is about home brewing. The question is a book that contains moonshine, bootleggers or unlicensed drinking. And for this I'm going with Persepolis by Marianne Satrapi, which is, I guess it is a memoir and not a novel, but you'll have to excuse that as well. It's a graphic work at least, and she's telling about her life in Iran and how that changed with the Ayatollahs coming into power. And there is definitely unlicensed drinking going on there because any drinking in that regime is unlicensed. Also, I think the Persepolis books are amazing and that everyone should read them. So the penultimate question is about gambling. It's a novel that features a gambler or a scene of gambling. And I mean, fitting with the topic of gambling, I am cheating a little again. I've chosen Nostalgien, or The Nostalgia by Mircea Cărtărescu, a Romanian author. This is a short story collection, hence the cheating, it's not a novel. But in the first short story in this collection, there's a scene with someone playing Russian roulette that has stuck with me since I read it the first time. This book really amazed me on my first reading of it. There were some scenes in here that are part of my thinking almost weekly, I would say still, even though I read this probably 9 years ago, I think. I did end up buying a lot of books by Cărtărescu, and this is still the only one I have actually finished because his writing tend to be quite dense, I would say, but I absolutely loved this when I read it the first time, and I think maybe it's time to try again. But there's definitely some gambling, some serious life-threatening gambling going on in the first short story here. So the 13th and last question is about cosplay, anything that involves a character dressing up or disguising themselves. For this I chose Raven Stratagem by Yoon Ha Lee. This is the second book in a really good sci-fi trilogy that I read earlier this year. There is definitely someone playing dress up or pretending to be someone who they're not in this book. But I'm not going to tell you who it is or how it is revealed because that would be giving away too much. But let's just say that there is some dressing up going on here. So before it gets too dark so you can't see me at all here, I mean, filming in Norway in winter is horrible because I don't have the brightest apartment, so I kind of depend on daylight to film, and we have scarce little of that this time of year, I'm afraid. But what's left for me to do now is just to tag someone, and I thought I should tag 3 people today. I want to tag A.G. MacDonald, which is a new booktube channel, and he's planning on doing tags every single week, so I'm betting he needs some. Also wanted to tag Shani from Shani Reads and Sophie from the channel Sophie P. So if you want to do this tag, feel free. If you want to ignore me, that's also fine. Hope you're all having a wonderful day, and I will see you next time. Bye bye.